Oklahoma oilmen are at war with each other. It's longtime vertical well operators against the new boys in town, horizontal frackers. An investigation by the ONR has found more than 100 vertical oil wells that have been damaged or killed because of horizontal hydraulic fracturing operations. It's a situation that major oil companies mostly deny or ignore. State government is powerless to help, and the courts are filled with cases that drag on for years. This is part one of an ongoing series, Oklahoma's Oil Wars.
It's a scene occurring almost daily across Oklahoma's oil patch. An old gas well that produced for decades at a rate just enough to make it profitable, now sitting dead next to what replaced it. A new oil and gas well owned by a major oil company that killed the old well with water and sand during their fracking operation. According to the Corporation Commission's Oil and Gas Division, hydraulic fracturing now makes up over 70% of all new oil and gas wells in the state. Dave Hager is CEO of Devon Energy.
We expect to invest about $750 million this year in what's called the Stack Play, just located to the northwest of Oklahoma City.
Lee Boothby, CEO of Texas-based Newfield Exploration, also likes what he sees in Oklahoma's Stack and Scoop oil plays.
In 2017 alone, the most active Oklahoma drillers have publicly pledged a planned investment of at least $5 billion. And that number, most probably, will prove to be too conservative.
The major oil companies have wanted for years to be able to drill those long lateral lines underground even further. There are 2 bills in the legislature this year that would allow them to do that, to drill 2 miles underground horizontally through any geological formation.
A simple change in the law that will promote growth and prosperity at no cost.
But there is already a cost to the mile-long horizontal wells. When the fracking process begins, millions of gallons of fresh water, chemicals, and very fine sand are pressurized through that borehole for 24 hours a day, sometimes for 2 weeks. While that produces lots of oil and gas, it has also been draining oil and gas out of reservoirs that vertical wells have been pumping for decades.
We've lost quite a few here lately to the horizontal drilling going on.
Jacob Weaver is a field supervisor of Gilliland Oil and Gas in Hennessey, Oklahoma.
They'll be sitting there producing long, and when they go to drill them or frack them, they'll water them out.
Water them out means the old vertical well has been filled with frack fluid.
They'll give us notification sometimes when they're going to be fracking. We'll shut them in, and when we open them up, there's nothing there but frack water.
Sometimes the vertical producers have brought in workover rigs to clean out the hole, hoping the oil and gas will come back.
When we have a well that's watered out, we really have no way of fixing that. You have to pump large volumes of water or swab large volumes of water out of the well at a high cost, and not knowing whether you're going to get your well back or not.
Steve Gilliland is president of Gilliland Oil and Gas. His company has lost 36 vertical wells to frackers. Steve Altman is president of Brown & Borelli, Inc., a vertical well operator in Kingfisher.
We operate about 70 wells in Kingfisher County, and we have had 19 of those wells hit and damaged or destroyed in some way from horizontal fracking.
Altman and Gilliland both say after working on their wells, a few did begin production again. But all of their wells are stripper wells, which means they didn't produce a lot of oil and gas in the first place. And if they come back, they produce even less.
After spending over $100,000 in trying to repair that damage, we've got the production back to about 37% of what it was in total.
There were other producers we talked with who refused to go on camera on advice of their attorneys. They did tell us they lost 16 and 19 wells respectively. There are producers in southern and eastern Oklahoma who have also lost wells to frack jobs. In all, we found over 100 wells damaged or dead from fracking operations. We asked the Corporation Commission Oil and Gas Division Director Tim Baker how many they have on record.
We have 13. 13 have been reported to the Corporation Commission that we've documented.
Baker acknowledges there are many more than that.
My gut feeling is it's a bigger problem than we have evidence to support.
Baker says he has tried to help these small producers, but they have to report to the commission what's going on.
We've tried to get operators to report these interferences from offsetting frac jobs. We spent an enormous amount of time in rulemaking the last 3 years trying to address this very issue.
But Baker says all of their attempts have failed, mainly because they don't have enough information to back up the need for new rules.
We will have a rule that goes into effect July 1 of this year that encourages operators to report these cases to the commission so we can investigate. If we don't have evidence, we can't investigate. We can't propose a rule if there's no evidence to demonstrate that there's a problem.
Producers we talked with said they had reported their problems, some to local field offices, others to the main Corporation Commission office. And they say it's like their complaints just disappeared.
The bigger oil and gas companies seem like to me they're going to get their way with the Corporation Commission. The Corporation Commission has never contacted me to ask me about any of my watered out wells.
And big oil companies still deny that their fracking operations harm vertical wells. George Solich is CEO of 4 Point Energy, which operates 700 vertical wells, along with its horizontal operations.
The rapid increase in horizontal drilling since 2009 has had no adverse impact on the natural production decline trend of those 700 vertical wells within 4 Point's operated footprint.
And the trade association most of the major oil companies belong to call the claims of the vertical well producers a falsehood. Steve Altman is also a petroleum engineer, and he says he can prove that hydraulic fracturing is killing his wells.
I have lots of data, what we call decline curves, where we plot the production versus time, and those can help us to anticipate what our oil and gas production will be in the future.
This is one of those documents. It clearly shows a vertical well in steady production until the day a nearby fracking operation began, and the well production drops to zero.
We've had wells that have been producing for 20 or 30 years, nice steady decline like you would anticipate, and all of a sudden, it's gone.
This is a map of Kingfisher County. The horizontal wells are identified by the yellow lines. After the first well is drilled, they come back and drill several more nearby. It's called infilling. As you drive through Kingfisher County, you can see what they leave behind. Well sites with 4 and 5 wells producing from the same area. This is a map of Kingfisher County with the horizontal wells and all of its vertical wells. It's not hard to understand how vertical wells could be wiped out.
It just goes on every day. I believe that vertical wells are being fracked into and ruined, and a lot of people are just not stepping forward.
Several of the producers we talked with did not want to talk on camera out of fear that their negotiations with the big fracking companies would be negatively impacted if they talked, or if they even told the Corporation Commission what was happening.
This issue of horizontal wells fracking into vertical wells and what those rules should say has been one of the most controversial issues I've had to address in my 30-plus years here.
To report well damage from a fracking operation, all you have to do is email Tim Baker at tim.baker@occemail.com. While the Corporation Commission does lack authority to deal with property losses, it does have all the authority it needs to deal with wells that cause environmental damage. And that's the subject of our next report on Oklahoma's Oil Wars.